Hello everyone, welcome to the flight, welcome to a rocket profile of the Zeus 641 configuration. At approximately T-minus 7 seconds, the RD-180 engine ignites. Now before that, the guidance will have started. The vehicle's engine will have started around T-minus 7 seconds. And powered up. And then, at main engine start, as the main engine powers up to full thrust, the 4 AJ-60 solid rocket boosters ignite to provide additional thrust to lift the vehicle off the pad. The roll maneuver begins at approximately T+5 seconds, followed shortly thereafter by the start of the pitch maneuver at T+7 seconds. The pitch program puts it on its downrange heading to the southeast of the launch pad. The vehicle's main engine burns 1 ton of propellant per second. In order to propel the payload into orbit, which in this case is potentially going to be the RSAT-1B mission. That is yet to be confirmed by the mission design team at the Real Space program. Upper stage's guidance system is provided through the payload's guidance, but that can be modified for potential other missions. If missions require a burn to escape Earth's orbit after separating its primary payload, or after deploying a secondary payload, there can be additional guidance units installed on the upper stage. Zeus transcends Mach 1 at approximately T+38 seconds after launch. The vehicle transcends Mach 1. The vehicle goes supersonic at T+38 seconds after liftoff. And experiences maximum dynamic pressure at reduce maximum dynamic pressure at approximately T plus and it's still going up. At approximately T plus 50 seconds. Maximum dynamic pressure, the Zeus is traveling at an altitude of 12 kilometers and downrange distance of 2 kilometers. The next major flight milestone is solid rocket booster separation. The SRBs separate in pairs of 2. Rather than the typical Kerbal way of all 4 at once. The SRBs are providing additional thrust through the early stages of flight. Approximately T plus 1 minute 5 seconds, this core booster throttles back in order to reduce high G forces and to allow the SRBs to provide more thrust on the main stage. SRB separation occurs about T plus 2 minutes and some odd seconds after liftoff. Approaching the 1 kilometer per second mark, the vehicle is traveling at an altitude of 28 kilometers, downrange distance 11 kilometers, and at a velocity of... The vehicle transcends the kilometer per second barrier. Altitude of 33 kilometers, downrange distance 14 kilometers, and traveling at a velocity of, well, 1 kilometer per second. Approaching solid rocket booster separation, the Atlas. Or correction, the Zeus. I know it looks like an Atlas. The Zeus is burning propellant at a rate of 1 ton per second in the core stage. The first 2 solid rocket boosters, or SRBs, are jettisoned at an altitude of 40 kilometers, a downrange distance of 19.3 kilometers, At an altitude of 20 kilometers, an altitude of 43 kilometers, downrange distance of 21.6 kilometers, the second pair of SRMs are jettisoned at 1 minute 39 seconds into the flight. Following SRB jettison, the Zeus core engine throttles back to moves back to 83% thrust, potentially. The Zeus core engine moves back to full power mode. Moves into the varying power mode in order to control the flight. In order to control the heating on the first stage, which apparently is getting hotter than the fairing for some reason. At 62 kilometers, the vehicle's flight profile can be modified to accommodate for the number of solid rocket boosters and the number of other flight amenities on board the vehicle. The angle of attack limiter has been disabled. That was just enabled for testing purposes. At 67 kilometers, the RD-180 engine is throttled back to its full power mode, in which it burns 1.2 tons of fuel per second. The next major flight milestone after SRB separation is payload fairing separation. Normally it would use an Atlas payload fairing, but we're using the Titan version because it looks more like something a rocket with its upper stage encapsulated would use. Arcing out to the southeast, the Zeus launch vehicle, traveling at an altitude of 89 kilometers, downrange distance of 75 kilometers, traveling at a velocity of 1.7 kilometers per second, separates its payload fairing off of the launch vehicle. This is done to reveal the Type 1 upper stage with its Merlin vacuum engine and its kerosene and liquid oxygen tank. When stage separation occurs, it is unknown how far the vehicle will be downrange, and its unknown altitude, mainly due to the fact that we haven't fully designed the vehicle flight profile. The engine begins a throttling phase in order to increase its rated burn time and decrease its the G-forces on the vehicle. it comes to this vehicle, the engine throttles all the way back to 0% thrust. The second stage provides some amount of velocity to get into orbit, but the first stage provides the majority of it. Approaching first stage cutoff, it is traveling at an altitude of 216 kilometers at a velocity of 4.6 kilometers per second and at downrange distance of 500 kilometers. Second stage engine ignition takes place at 224 kilometers altitude and at T plus 4 minutes 56 seconds after liftoff. The second stage immediately begins a pitch phase. In order to control, will potentially begin a pitch phase. I shouldn't say it will, because the launch script will be designed and run in the Kerbal Remote Protocol system, and is not designed by me. I am simply the payload manager. So basically, I take the payloads mounted on the vehicle and test it, see which configuration of the vehicle can get into orbit. For potential payload users, if you'd like to find out what capabilities Zeus has, simply look at the Atlas V specs. The Atlas V specs will give you most of the information that you need for the Zeus LV. With Zeus, the upper stage provides the majority of the delta V provides the second part of the delta V to get into orbit, and can perform additional maneuvers, such as a geostationary transfer orbit. I have not tested it with a translunar injection orbit. But Zeus can lift this almost 8-ton satellite into geostationary It can lift a heavy satellite into geostationary transfer orbit. Now, for any satellite weighing over 8 tons, we can potentially develop a then you would need to rely on the Taurus 1 heavy launch vehicle for your ride to orbit. 8 tons is the heaviest capacity of the Zeus launch vehicle. The Zeus 651, 6-meter fairing, 5 boosters, can lift 14 tons to low Earth orbit. Please stand by. Never mind. Zeus flies a very specific launch profile that involves a pitch-down maneuver. And the engine to throttle back slightly as the vehicle speeds up. Now, the vehicle does a pitch down to -15 degrees below the horizon in order to pull the periapsis up. And reduce the apoapsis, thus resulting in a more circular orbit. Approaching second stage engine cutoff. The vehicle travels at a velocity of 7.2 kilometers per second at second stage cutoff. But anyways, thank you for watching this launch profile of the Zeus 641 vehicle. I'm Andy Epix. I'll see you next time. Bye! Oh, and be sure to check out my other profiles of the 311 and the 615 launch vehicles of the same Zeus series. Anyway.